Hi everyone, welcome to the OK Star Wars podcast. I don't think it's actually called I think it's called an OK Star Wars podcast. I don't even think we made
It
ourselves
is. It is an
definitively.
okay.
Yeah, we're not even definitively the OK Star Wars podcast. We're just a OK Star Wars.
There could be conceivably a more okay Star Wars podcast. We don't know yet.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's up to you guys to judge. We can't really be the judge of that. So let us know
Yeah.
if you
Please let us know in the comments.
if you. I mean, I don't think people can comment on most podcasts. Like, they can comment on the YouTube video. There is a YouTube version of
Yeah,
this.
the YouTube video.
It's totally worth watching because it's exactly the same as the Spotify or Apple version, but
You can leave your comments.
and there's a photo usually of the film's poster slowly zooming into whoever has the silliest face on that poster.
We usually judge it.
It definitely was Jar Jar in the first one, yeah. Anyways, in today's episode, we're talking about Solo, a Star Wars story, which is the next film chronologically in the canon of Star Wars, but it is the second most recent Star Wars film. So we're suddenly jumping from films that are like, Revenge of the
Quite
Sith.
a little old at this point, but not too old. But,
Yeah, I mean, Revenge of the Sith was what,
very recent.
15 years old?
Really? Damn, I'm old. Fuck.
I feel like, yeah, I think it was 2005. So 15 years old, and then we're suddenly jumping to 2018, so 2 years old. It's a pretty major jump. First of all, just kind of general thoughts. What are your general thoughts on this film?
I like Solo. It was fun. It was, it's definitely not high art, but it's a fun little adventure up.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I'm Pete. He's Ben, just in case this is your first time watching.
I'm Ben.
And we're not joined by anyone this time, and we might not get a special guest star jumping in. He chickened out at the last minute, so there probably won't be someone jumping in. But if there is, that'll happen. There's no way of stopping them.
It'll be unfortunate,
Yeah.
but we'll see.
Yeah, no, I really like Solo as well, and this is coming from a perspective of really not looking forward to this film at all.
No, never was I. I think they expect it. Bears mentioning the expectations for this film were not high at all. This was widely expected to be panned, to be a box office bomb,
which it was, unfortunately.
Yeah, but not for the right reasons. It was a very troubled development.
Yes, so this and the other A Star Wars story film, which we'll do next episode, both famous for having pretty major production issues. Basically, from the sounds of things, Disney and the directors had different viewpoints on how to tackle the film. With Rogue One, that had some different results, but in Solo, it featured I'm not sure whether they were fired or whether they chose to leave, but the two original directors ended up not directing the film, and it had to have massive reshoots with Ron Howard at the helm. And again, we'll talk about Rogue One in more detail, but I feel like this feels like a cohesive film. Rogue One has a little bit of that whiplash to it.
We'll get into Rogue One. I did not know that had a troubled development, though. That's interesting.
I think with Rogue One, it was just reshooting basically the final act after the advanced screenings, like months before the film came out. They did reshoots for the final act, which you can kind of tell from the trailers, but I think we'll dive into that fully next episode. But with this one, I don't know how much of this film had been shot originally, but pretty much the entire film, from my understanding, was reshot with Ron Howard at the helm. And that's why it feels cohesive. Unfortunately, that means that the budget got pushed up, and then as we mentioned, it was kind of a box office bomb. I don't know whether it was like a full-blown box office bomb, but far below projections.
Yeah, no, it definitely didn't make a profit. I don't think it's considered a bomb, though.
But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this film. And I think a massive part of that was going into it with incredibly low expectations and being pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I remember sitting down and being like, yeah, this is going to be like, whatever, I'm just going to go into it with like a bit of an open mind. I don't have high expectations, but like, let's see what happens. Surprise me.
Yeah, exactly. And, for anyone who, for some reason, is listening to this podcast and hasn't watched any Star Wars films before, it's a weird choice to be spending your time listening to two guys talk about a franchise you're not invested in. But
Yeah, especially an okay podcast.
yeah,
But yeah,
but basically, Han Solo probably one of the most iconic characters in cinema history, along with a lot of the other Star Wars original trilogy characters. The first Star Wars film was 1979, I want to say.
that I want to say earlier, like 77.
Not sure. This is me showing myself as a pathetic Star Wars fan who doesn't even know when the original film came
Not a
out.
real fan.
Yeah, fake fan. I'm just checking it now. 1977. You were right. Oh my god.
Unlike you, I am a real fan.
Yeah, despite the fact that you got Duel of Fates confused with. Um, we're both fake fans, just
Hey,
on different
I'm an
days.
original trilogy real fan.
Okay, and I'm a prequel real fan. Um, yeah. So those films have been around now for 50 years approximately. I mean, they'd been around for 50 years when this film came out, and so Han Solo had been existing in pop culture for that long. And
did it surprise you at all that they decided to go with a Han Solo film instead of anyone else?
I think one of the things I remember saying when this film came out is that this film, to me, would be a perfect Star Wars film if it wasn't about Han Solo and Chewbacca, it was just about two brand new smugglers doing smuggling stuff. Because the story doesn't need to be about Han Solo at all. You could completely transpose this with a brand new character and it would work absolutely fine. I don't think it's...
If anything, I would say that it even kind of drags it down just a little bit, just because it's Han Solo. We have to put Han Solo things in there. We got to put the Millennium Falcon in there. We got to put Lando in there. We got to put Chewbacca in there. So like, it comes with all this baggage that sort of like necessitates the movie going to certain places and doing certain things.
Yeah, and in spite of all of that, which going into this, I fully expected that to be the death of this film at the door, is someone else playing Han Solo who can replace Harrison Ford. Hopefully no one will ever replace him when it comes to Indiana Jones, but like, although he really should stop doing those himself, he's making another one for some reason.
God.
But it's I was like, no one can replace Harrison Ford, and that I felt was going to be the death of the film right there. And then the early trailers did not do anything to kind of ease my feelings. I think most people were like, hey, Donald Glover looks pretty good as Lando. Full stop. That's the end of their impressions on the movie. And I was really pleasantly surprised that Alden Ehrenreich, who plays Han Solo in this film, does a really good job of playing He's not trying to play Harrison Ford's Han Solo. He's trying to play his own Han Solo, and it works because I don't know when exactly this film is set in terms of the years. I know it's set before Rogue One because that's leading directly into the original Star Wars, but I don't know whether it's 5, 10, 15 years before the original Star Wars. It's not crystal clear, but it's
It feels like it's supposed to be even like longer beforehand. I guess it can't be though.
I don't know, because the end of the film ends with Han hearing about a job that a big gangster is setting up in Tatooine,
yes.
And then that's the job, which means that he has a bounty on his head in the original Star Wars. But to be fair, he could have had a bounty on his head for the past 5 years and just never come back to Tatooine until the events of Star Wars. So it's not clear, but I feel like, I mean, Alden Ehrenreich is 30. I have no idea how old Harrison Ford was when he shot the original Star Wars, but I'm going to guess in his 30s. So the age difference between the actors is not massive, but it feels like this Han Solo is supposed to be like 19 to 25, somewhere in that age range. So, but he comes off as a younger, not fully realized persona Han Solo, because Han Solo, the way he presents himself as this cool smuggler, it is a persona, and this feels like he hasn't actually formalized that yet, so he's still kind of working things out, and that really works in favor.
He feels like his own sort of character. He feels like the precursor of Han Solo, which is, ideal because this is the precursor movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost as big a difference as Anakin to Darth Vader. Like, it could be a completely different character, but it is Han Solo. So the film opens up when he's like again, late teens, maybe early 20s on Corellia. You've got Han. He's basically just escaping from like a job gone wrong because he's basically like a petty thief working for a
Yeah,
gang.
he's like the getaway driver.
Yeah, and we see him steal a like hover car and make his way to the like gang hideout where he's essentially enslaved. And then we are introduced to Kira, who is the love interest of the film.
She's basically the female lead.
Yeah, and her and Han are clearly in love, and they're planning to run away together. And their plan is that if they get enough coaxium, which is hyperspace fuel, then they can sell it and they can buy their way off world and then start a new life together. And what Han has done is, rather than sell some coaxium during this job, he's stolen it. So he's trying to double cross the gangster that basically owns his life. Unfortunately, the gangsters work that one out for themselves, and Han is basically about to be killed when he picks up a rock, or he has a rock in his pocket or something, and he pretends that it's a thermal detonator, and then this
classic check.
Yeah, and this like worm, like alien creature that's the mob boss. It's like, that's not a thermal detonator, that's a rock, and he's like, no, it's thermal detonator, and I've just armed it. And she's like, you just clicked with your tongue. And he's like, nope, no, I didn't. Anyways, he throws the rock at a window shutter, and it like reveals sunlight on this monster thing, and it's like really, really sensitive to sunlight, and that allows him and Kira to get away.
Gotta wonder why this mob boss would be in such a position. I'm just nitpicking. Shut up, me. Go on.
You do wonder why she's not deeper underground than one layer. Yeah.
Like, just get in a fucking cave or some shit.
This is the equivalent of like a vampire living in a house with lots and lots of windows, but he just keeps the curtains drawn, rather than living in the basement somewhere. So Han and Kira escape. They get into the car, or the hover car that Han stole earlier.
Sequence.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool sequence, and this is when I was like, okay, this film might be pretty decent.
It might be okay.
Yeah,
it's a pretty long chase sequence. Not too long, but it's pretty technically impressive. I'm not sure if they did practical effects for it at all. I want to say they did.
I know this film does definitely feature practical effects. I don't know about this particular sequence, but this film definitely... I guess this is the first Disney Star Wars film that we're talking about. I feel like it's worth saying, compared to the prequel trilogy, one of the things that Disney have definitely done right, whether you like a lot of the stuff that Disney has done with Star Wars, one of the things they've definitely done right is more leaning on practical effects than CGI. And using CGI in intelligent ways when necessary, because ultimately CGI should not be either CGI or practical, and people who go full for practical and never use CGI, they're not getting the right idea either. The best way to use these two technologies is to blend them together in creative ways to get the best results, because they do different things. This sequence, though, as you say, technically it looks great. I mean, real quick as well, I want to mention, what do you think about the general look of this film? Because I know it got some criticism when it came out.
This part especially is like, Corellia looks very grimy and like just kind of like destitute. I remember thinking like, you sort of have this idea, if you're a Star Wars fan, you sort of have this idea about Corellia, that it's like this, it's a really like prosperous place. Now it could be that the Empire will kind of like put it on hard times, because they're the Empire, they make everything worse. But I really like the aesthetic of this movie. Everything's kind of like realistic looking and grounded, and it kind of like feels lived in.
Yeah, it definitely has that original trilogy grit to it. And as you say, everything kind of feels real and like you can touch it. But the other thing is this film got a lot of criticism when it came out for the cinematography, because supposedly it's too dark and too kind of brown and grey.
I never really minded that. I'm not really the sort of person who's like, oh, this needs more color. Like, if I say something needs a lot of color, like more color, it's like an exceptionally drab movie or drab video game or something like that. I didn't really get that impression from this.
Here's the thing, ultimately, because I've straight up read reviews where they were like, I can't see what's going on during certain sequences. It's just like a black screen. I'm like, if you can't see what's going on in this movie, you either went to a cinema that doesn't pay for decent projectors, or you don't have your TV set up correctly, which is most likely true. And I worked in TVs for a while. Most TVs come out of the box set up to work in stores under harsh lights, and they look like shit, and you really should adjust the picture quality to look good. If you want it to look like the directors intended, there's an entire initiative about it now, I think headed by Tom Cruise, but you can research things to adjust on your TV setup. I saw this film for my birthday treat in the British Film Institute's IMAX cinema in London, so basically the best cinema screen in England.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fucking awesome, and this film is, in my opinion, the best shot Star Wars film, with The Last Jedi coming closely in second. I think this film is gorgeous, and it really, I think, intentionally emanates Raiders of the Lost Ark's kind of visual style, which I think is really, really appropriate for an origin story for Han Solo, to use an Indiana Jones kind of visual aesthetic.
Yeah, that's cute.
But yeah, so anyways, they narrowly escape the pursuers in this.
Very pointedly narrowly, because at one point he has to like juke the speedolon to like flip it sideways to get through a really narrow pass or some shit. That was a pretty cool scene.
Yeah, and they make it like 95% of the way, and then it gets stuck, and then they have to run on foot. And they make it to the spaceport, and then they're like trying to make their way through customs, and they get to and the hunters are there, like the gangsters are there, but looking for them in the crowd. And it's an Imperial spaceport, so it's incredibly like tight security and stormtroopers all around, and they see like stormtroopers dragging people away from their family and stuff, and it's, you know, building up the tension. They get to the customs office, and they're like, just let us through. And she's like, where's your security passes? And they're like, we don't have them, but here, we'll give you this coaxium if you let us through. And then the Imperial officer's like, okay, put it through and I'll open the door. And then Han like tries to debate with her, like, open the door first and we'll give you the coaxium, which is losing time. Eventually they do just give her the coaxium. She opens the door, Han gets through, but then the door closes as soon as Kira goes to go through, and she gets caught by the gangsters at exactly the same time. So Han is now on the opposite side of like essentially security terminals at an airport, and Kira is being dragged away by the gangsters they just double-crossed. So he hides out because the stormtroopers are now looking for someone who got through customs illegally, and then he sees an advert to join the flight academy for the Imperial Army, and he does that. He does exactly that.
Up.
And this is one of the things I want to mention I really like about this film, is if you're a massive Star Wars nerd and you know about Han Solo's origin story from the books and comics and such, like, there are some, there are some facts about Han that are never explored in the movies, and one of them is the fact that he used to be a Imperial pilot, which is an interesting layer to this character, because it means he was one of the villains at one point. This film absolutely keeps that, which is really, really cool.
And true to form, the next scene, I believe, is him in a war situation, right?
Yeah, so he's like he's talking to he's talking to the guy who's like signing up for the military, and he's like, "What's your name, son?" He's like, "My name's Han." What's your surname? What's your clan name? Yes. I don't have anyone. Han Solo.
So, yeah,
this film's for kids.
I remember watching that, and that's one of the scenes that annoyed. I forgot all about it because it was so stupid. And I was like, so that's where his name comes from, just this fucking like 9 to 5 motherfucker like receptionist at the desk.
And he's like, I'm gonna keep that name for the rest of my life.
Yeah, you know what? This guy was onto something.
It's also great because if it means that he's got no clan, then when he meets Chewbacca, he's like, all right, we're best buddies. We're going to spend the rest of our lives together on this ship, but I'm still Han Solo. Still a solo act. And then he meets Luke and Leia, and he's like, I'm still on my own.
Still Han Solo.
Yeah, it's a dumb line, and it's, as I said, this movie's aimed for kids. That's obviously going to get a reaction out of like 7-year-olds and whatever. It's
Yeah.
absolutely not necessary, but at the end of the day, that those sorts of moments are in this film. I think they do worsen the film, but such a minute making the film work. Like, it doesn't impact my overall opinion on the film, but the film would
Yeah.
be better without those sorts of little bits that it has there, here and there.
Mhm.
But then, yeah, he's like, if you, Han's like, I'm going to be the best pilot in the galaxy. And then the dude's like saying something like, I'm sure you'll be flying in no time. And then it does a hard cut to Han flying through the air from like a grenade going off or something in the middle of a war
Yes.
zone, which is a great little cut.
Pretty good cut, yeah.
Because they did cut out a scene where he's like actually fired from the Imperial Navy, and I've watched the scene. It's mildly funny, but it doesn't. It's not a good transition compared to this. So, yeah.
So he's now a conscript on the fucking front lines, putting down some fucking rebellion or some shit. And there was like, it's a pretty good war scene actually. Like as far as like establishing how fucking like miserable the conditions are, and like just how terrible it must have been to be like an imperial conscript.
Yeah, and it's like straight up trench warfare as well. Like the original Star Wars films take from like World War One and World War Two movies in terms of like the X-wing sequences.
Yeah.
This definitely takes from like trench warfare, and it looks awesome. I really love the feel of this planet. He witnesses his commander dead, like, or dying, and then he approaches someone else who's like apparently the new. Yeah, and then he sees this captain who's now the new guy in charge, who basically orders all of them to do a certain tactic, whatever. Basically. Yeah. And then afterwards, Han tries to speak to this captain and thank him for his help. And then the captain's like, "Piss off! I want nothing to do with you." And then starts talking to some other Imperials, and Han kind of eavesdrops and works out that they're not actually stormtroopers. They are criminals planning to steal something from this Imperial encampment. And he notices like the captain's wearing a dead stormtrooper's armor because it's got blaster holes in it and that sort of thing.
Pretty good stuff.
Yeah. So he then tries to weasel his way into this mission. This heist.
He doesn't want to fucking be there anymore.
Yeah, he's fucking done with this shit, and he's like, well, these guys presumably have a ship or something. They have access to the entire galaxy. If I can join up with them, it's my way out of here.
They are not filled to have him, though.
No, they are telling him straight up, piss off or we'll just kill you. But he keeps on pushing, and then he tries to like blackmail them by saying that he'll turn them in to the other Imperial authorities if he doesn't let them in the gang.
At this point, they should have just killed him.
Yes, they should. It's also worth mentioning he like showed a bit of insubordination in an earlier like squadron meeting with like a lieutenant or whatever. So when he tries to blackmail the gang, they just summoned the lieutenant from earlier, and they're like, "Hey, this guy's trying to desert," and he's like, "I should have known. Throw him in with the beast." So they arrest Han and they throw him into a pit with the beast.
Beast is, of course, Chewbacca.
Yeah, and this is a really awesome intro to Chewbacca. Again, if you know any Star Wars anything, you know who the Beast is going to be as soon as it's mentioned, but it's still a really cool like reveal and build up to it. And for anyone who doesn't know Han and Chewbacca's relationship, if this is somehow like the first film you're watching involving Han and Chewbacca, and you've never come across those two as a duo, I feel like it would work really, really well as a reveal of this character. So,
yeah, we got Chewie, and of course Han does not want to. He cannot fight Chewie because Chewie is very powerful, so he tries to make friends with him.
Yeah, Chewie is straight up trying to murder Han, and I don't know whether the stormtroopers are lying, but supposedly other deserters and other like criminals have been thrown into that pit, and Chewbacca has supposedly eaten them. So
that doesn't sound right to me.
They're like, he hasn't been fed all day or something before they throw Han in, and it's like, are we being told that Chewbacca eats people or has eaten people? Because that kind of colors my opinion on this guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's a Wookiee.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Maybe Chewbacca eats people.
I mean, he rips people's arms off, but
he does do that.
Eating them is a little bit beyond. But But yeah, so he tries to murder Han, but Han luckily knows a tiny bit of Shiriwook, which is the language of the Wookiees, enough to get Chewbacca to stop murdering him.
How? Is that ever explained?
No, he knows a bit.
He
Which,
just knows. Okay, that's fine. Whatever.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, that was how it was in the original film, and this film does a good job of not trying to explain every single little bit of Han. It does a lot of, like, obviously tells us why he's called Han Solo, but shows us how he gets his gun and whatever, but it doesn't go as far as, like, and this is how Han got his jacket.
Yeah. Gotta know that.
Yeah, which a comic book did once explain, and I don't remember why, but there is a story in the expanded universe about how Han got his exact jacket that he wears in the movies. Because it's important to tell that story.
We should do an expanded universe thing one of these days.
I think when we finish the films, we're going to start diving into everything else, including expanded universe, and boy, there's some shit in the expanded universe.
That'll be a fucking trip.
Yeah. But yeah, so he knows a little bit of Shiriwook. He manages to convince Chewie to stop murdering him, and then he's like, hey, if you punch this pipe that you punched earlier, it's weak, we can escape. So they start, like, play fighting instead, and then Chewbacca manages to collapse the, like, roof of the prison cell that they're on, which the two stormtroopers are standing on, murdering the stormtroopers in the process, and then he just, like, throws Han, like, 30 feet in the air or whatever out of this prison cell and climbs up after him. They're still chained together, and they start trying to run in opposite directions, but Han manages to convince Chewie that he has some friends waiting for him with a ship and they can get out of here. His friends are the gangsters.
Yep. So they go there, and obviously they're not pleased to see him, but at this point Han has shown,
He's
some
tenacious.
pretty good... Yeah, he's tenacious. He's shown some survival skill, and he's got a giant Wookiee with him.
Yeah, and that is more the reason why the leader of the gang, Beckett, is okay with letting Han in, is because he has a Wookiee, and Wookiees are cool, so I guess
Wookiees
this
are
kid
cool,
can come
and
with us.
They're very strong and powerful and, decent shots.
Yeah, exactly. So they bring them along to a job that they're doing where they're planning on stealing. Can you guess what they're planning on stealing? It's what this entire film revolves around. They introduced it in the first act.
Is it the coaxium?
Yeah, that's the one.
But it's a train heist.
It is a train heist. Weird thing. Do you remember fuel ever really being a major plot point in Star Wars films before this and The Last Jedi?
Like, maybe in some of the video games, like Rogue Leader or something, like, oh, we need to refuel or something, or like, some bullshit like that.
Yeah, like, fuel existed in Star Wars before that, but I never remember it being a plot point. And then we had, within the space of 6 months, because The Last Jedi and Solo came out 6 months apart, we had 2 films where a major plot point is fuel. It's just like, okay.
Gotta be more realistic and grounded on a space fantasy.
But yeah, so they go to another planet. I'm going to be completely honest and say I don't remember half the planets in this film. It doesn't explicitly name them, I don't think, in the actual film. I'm sure they are on the Wikipedia article. It's a snowy planet, yeah. And they go on a train heist where...
Pretty cool.
Oh, also, it's worth noting that because they're both caked in mud, when they are on the ship heading to this snowy planet, Han takes a shower on the ship and Chewbacca just joins him. So within, like, a day of them meeting, Chewbacca gets to see Han's schlong. So if you were wondering whether they'd ever seen each other naked, the answer is 100% yes.
The answer is in this film.
Yes, this film answers a lot of your burning questions about Han and Chewbacca's exact relationship and the nature behind it. And it involves showering together, ladies and gentlemen.
Chewbacca, he's a bear in more ways than one.
But yeah, they head to this snowy planet where the job is to break onto a train. Before they do that, they are, like, planning it at a campfire, and we have quite a nice conversation about why they're doing things.
Yeah, we get to know the coup a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So Beckett has Val, who he's in love with, the lovers, and I can't remember the name of the other guy, but he's like this 4-armed monkey dude.
Yeah.
I
liked him.
Yeah, I liked him, but I don't remember his name, unfortunately.
Neither do I. I remember liking him and being like, he's probably gonna die, and he does.
Yes. This film fucking rams its way through the cast. Like, there are so many characters who appear in this film and are like decent actors as well. Like Tandy Newton plays Val, who's a pretty prominent British actor. I don't know how big she is in America, but yeah, these people get killed off like it's Game of Thrones or some shit. Like,
Yep. And which is fair. It's a train heist. They're not known for being safe.
No, absolutely not. And it does then raise the stakes, because you know that Han's going to live, you know that Chewie's going to live, you know that Lando's going to live, but pretty much anyone else is expendable, and there are characters you get attached to, and not all of them survive, but some of them do. So, but during this kind of campfire scene, we also get to learn a little bit about why Han and Chewie are doing this job. Han, we already know, but he kind of explicitly puts it into words. He's planning on getting...
pilot.
Yeah, and he's planning on being the best pilot, getting a ship, and then heading back to Corellia to save Kira. So even after all these years where he's been a stormtrooper, he's still planning on going back and rescuing Kira from her fate.
Forget, what's Chewie's motivations?
Chewie wants to find his clan or family, and Han says, I don't know whether he's saying clan or family, and then the four-armed monkey dude is like, it's the same. So, which is a nice moment as well, because for a character who never speaks English and is only ever kind of translated for by third parties, I think the arc that Chewbacca has in this film is that Han becomes his new family, because later on in the film he chooses to stay with Han rather than go with his clan, because Han is now his family. And I think that's considering that none of it is explicitly said in English, I think that's really well done as a character arc for him.
I also feel as if Chewbacca is pretty expressive in this movie.
Yes. It's also, I don't know whether this is worth noting, but maybe someone will say that we didn't mention it if we don't mention it. I think this is the first film that fully doesn't feature Peter Mayhew as Chewbacca. It features the guy who was doing Chewbacca for most of The Last Jedi, but not all of it, and most of The Force Awakens, but not all of it. I can't remember his name. I remember he's Dutch, I want to say, or sweet. He's
a dude.
He's a dude who's tall, strong, and blonde, and he seems cool. But he now plays Chewbacca, and in this film he plays him for the entirety of the film. Yeah, that's just a thing that I know about this film. But yeah,
Justice for Peter Mayhew.
Yeah. And then Beckett also takes apart a sniper rifle and hands it to Han as now a pistol, which explains, if you were ever wondering why Han's pistol has a gigantic fucking scope on it, which seems incredibly impractical, it's because it used to be a sniper rifle until the barrel and the stock came off.
I can't believe this is answering all my questions I ever had about Han Solo.
I mean, I'm fine with it. It's kind of cute that Beckett, who's this pretty retroactively a pretty influential person in Han's life, Han still carries that exact gun all those years later. It's kind of cute. Because, I'm sure Han could have bought another gun if he wanted to, but he keeps using that one gun, so...
There must be a reason behind that.
Yeah, which we'll find out later in the film, possibly. So then they do the train heist, and basically Monkey Man is on the ship piloting it, and they are going to basically dislodge the train cars from the rest of the train, so that they can lift up an entire train car of coaxium, essentially.
Classic train heist.
Yeah, exactly. Loads of examples of this exact job being done in the Wild West. You've got your spaceship, and then you're dislodging the train carriages, and yeah.
Because that's where all the gold is.
Yeah. And then Val is going to blow up the train tracks so that it can basically... I don't think it's actually explicitly said why she's doing it, but I'm assuming it's basically so if all of the coaxium gets destroyed, then they're not going to be missing one carriage, so they won't even know that a heist took place, is I'm assuming the reason behind it, but I don't actually remember what they explicitly said.
I don't remember the exact reason.
But yeah.
I think it was maybe just like a distraction thing so that they could get away clean, because the Imperials would obviously have to deal with the busted ass fucking bridge.
Yeah. But either way, so she's off way ahead down the track, blowing it up. And Han, Beckett, and Chewbacca head onto the actual train. They start attaching things, and during this, they get attacked by stormtroopers. Now, one thing...
Snowtroopers.
Yeah, with magnetic boots. And so when the train turns, they get stuck to it, while Han, Chewie, and Beckett don't have magnetic boots, so they're like being thrown around as the train literally can do like 360 degrees on this like hover rail that it's on.
I remember the scene being really tense, actually.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things we mentioned, kind of practical effects earlier, one of the reasons why I think this scene works so well is the behind the scenes footage of how they did this. Is they have essentially got one train carriage suspended in air, loads of like padding underneath it, so if the actors actually fall off, they don't get injured. Yeah. And then obviously they're like suspended up so that they're not likely to fall anyways. But they are essentially on this thing that is rotating.
Essentially hanging off of it.
Yeah, so when it rotates, the actors don't have to like pretend that they're stumbling. They are actually stumbling because the ground is moving underneath them, which is really, really cool. And it makes it feel tense when characters nearly fall off because the actors are actually nearly falling off. And then they just, green screened in a mountain and stuff. Also, just from a technological point of view, one of the things that they were using a lot with this, it kind of goes on to be used in The Mandalorian in a more advanced way. But they're using 3D tracking technology to create environments that they can view on a computer screen. So that when they move the camera, they can know where like the different mountains are going to be on this digital set that they're building. I think when we get around to talking about The Mandalorian, I think I want to talk about that technology in even more detail because it's done even more impressively with LED screens that it's all actually captured in camera. It's really fucking awesome. But this is like the precursor to that, and it works really well. The CGI in this film looks fantastic. I don't think I have any issues with any CGI in this film, which is a blessing coming from the prequel trilogy.
So obviously things go wrong.
Yes, they managed to defeat the stormtroopers, but then this group of gangsters led by Enfys Nest show up, and I think Beckett mentions her in the camp the night before. I think Val's like, are we sure that Enfys Nest doesn't know about this? And he's like, there's no way that Enfys Nest knows about this.
Okay, so I think that's why they're blowing it up, because they wanted to pin it on Nest.
Possibly, yeah. So Enfys Nest shows up, and the soundtrack for this film is already pretty good, but the Enfys Nest stuff is fucking awesome.
Who did the soundtrack for this?
Let me have a look. I don't remember, but I know this is his first Star Wars project. John Powell.
Pretty good, John Powell.
Yeah.
When you watch this, good job.
we liked your stuff, buddy, and we want you to do more stuff. I mean, again, like where we're talking about the things that Disney Star Wars does right, and there's plenty that you can say that Disney Star Wars did wrong, but the stuff it did right, practical effects and the music that is in the Disney Star Wars projects, because it's not just the films, it's not just great, it also just expands what Star Wars can be in their musical thing, because John Williams is a great musician and a great composer, but all of his soundtracks sound like John Williams soundtracks, which is not a criticism. Yep. It's just you can recognize it instantly.
You recognize the style?
Yeah, even if it's Superman, you still are like, that's John Williams. It doesn't sound like Star Wars, but it sounds like John Williams. And these new audio projects related to Star Wars projects still sound like they're part of the same audio space as Star Wars, but just adding in new instruments, adding in new sounds, and just expanding it, which is really fucking cool. So,
yeah, especially The Mandalorian.
Yes, the Mandalorian is just instantly like whoa when it comes to its music. But even this, when the Enfys Nest theme tune kicks in when she first shows up in the scene, I was like, oh damn, that's fucking cool sounding. And yeah, she causes massive problems for them. They manage to just about get one of the train cars up in the air and being like lifted up by the ship. But so do Enfys Nest men. They manage to hook onto it as well. So it's kind of being suspended between the cruise ship and Enfys Nest's swoop bikes. Also, Val gets attacked by probe droids and blows up the tracks but kills herself in the process. And one of Enfys Nest's men gets on board the ship and kills Monkey Man. So both of them die in this sequence, and it's pretty brutal. So Han ends up having to pilot the ship, and he does a pretty decent job of it, but basically Enfys Nest's men are not disconnecting from the train car, Han isn't disconnecting from the train car under Beckett's orders, and they're about to all fly into a mountain and explode the entirety of the coaxium. So Beckett's like, no, they'll drop first. Just, it's basically a game of chicken.
Yeah.
And Han disobeys him
Han
and drops the
blanks,
coaxium.
yep. So they make off of it. So
Job's a bust. And two people basically died for nothing. So Beckett is furious. I think he even punches Han in the next scene.
Yes, I remember that.
And then he's like, if I'm now going to have to show up to the guy who hired me to do this and explain that we've got no coaxium, I'm going to die. You two might as well piss off, and he doesn't need to know that you were involved. And Han and Chewie decide, no, we're going to stick with you, and we're going to get through this together, because hopefully we can convince him not to kill us, and then we'll sort it out together, because you gave us a chance, so we're going to stick with you.
It is an interesting character arc that Han goes through in this film. Scene where they decide they're going to go with him is just remember it. Remember the scene.
Yeah, absolutely, and it also, I think, it shows this great contrast of who Han is in this film compared to who Han is when we meet him in Star Wars. Because in Star Wars, he straight up is like, I'm doing this for the money, and the rebels,
cynical, mercenary bastard.
Yeah, and the rebels are like, hey, we could really use it, or not even the rebels. Luke is like, hey, we could really use a great pilot to help us with the attack on the Death Star. And he's like, I've got my money. Who's going to spend my money if I'm dead? See you later. He obviously changes his mind and comes and rescues them at the last minute, or not rescues them, but helps them. But he's genuine when he tells them to piss off earlier in the movie.
Yep.
In this movie,
he's a bit of an idealist.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, he's literally given the perfect out. His name is not connected to that job in any way, shape, or form, and he's like, nope, I'm going to help you because it's the right thing to do.
Yep.
So he then goes to Dryden Voss's space yacht. It's like
it's like a weird fucking pleasure thing. It's got a lot of aliens. It's got a lot of people in nice dresses and drinks and stuff. It's
we get a casino scene essentially.
Not quite as overwrought as Tycho Bite.
Yeah, and yeah, it feels much more kind of. Yeah, if compared to Canto Bite, it feels much more kind of downplayed and natural. While Canto Bite is like, hey, look at this. This is very much
hitting you over the fucking head.
Yeah, and the alien designs in this film are great. There's some really cool new alien designs. They meet with Dryden Voss, who is, I guess, near human, but they do this thing where when he gets angry, his skin stretches and you see these weird red, almost scar things going down his face. It's really creepy.
Pretty good.
Paul Bettany fucking kills this role. He's clearly having so much fun being in a Star Wars film as a villain. So they meet with Dryden Voss, who is a leader of the Crimson Dawn criminal syndicate.
Good name, actually.
Yeah, really cool name. And during the meeting, before they actually meet with him, Beckett tells Han to not talk to anyone and just kind of keep his head down. So he's doing that, and then he bumps straight into Kira, and Kira's like, oh my god, it's you.
Oh, it's you.
Yeah, and he's like, what are you doing here? Last I saw, you were enslaved back in Corellia. And she's like, yeah.
I'm a femme fatale now.
I am a femme fatale now, but I got sold from one slaver, the old gang, to my new slaver, Beckett. Not Beckett, Dryden Voss. Getting those names mixed up. So he's then like, wow, you're here, but also now I need to rescue you from this guy rather than Corellia. So then he meets with Beckett. Not Beckett, I'm going to keep on doing that, clearly. Yeah, Dryden. And it turns out that Kira is basically Dryden's right-hand lady.
Is she evil now?
Yeah, she is the femme fatale to his mobster boss, godfather, shtick.
Yep. There's a lot of scenes of her, kind of calming him down and, offering her input on stuff. And, it's pretty clear that he owns her, but he's still taking her pretty seriously.
Mhm. Yeah, it's clear that she's earned her right to be by his side, but he does still own her. She's still a slave, and it's interesting because from Han's perspective, she's like completely this damsel that needs rescuing.
Yeah.
From her perspective, this is her life, and it might be shitty that she's a slave, but she's also respected. She has power.
She's made something of herself.
Yeah, exactly. But basically, Dryden Voss is like, well, you lost the coaxium. Maybe I should just kill you all. And then Beckett's like, oh, we'll make it up to you. And he's like, how are you going to make it up to me? I needed this much coaxium. You're never going to get that much coaxium, so it's done. I'm just going to kill you because there's no way you can get that much coaxium. And Han's like, what if we did? What if we got you more coaxium than you originally wanted? And Dryden Voss is like, well, I just told you that was impossible, but by all means, Han Solo, tell me how you're going to do this. And Han's like, and then Beckett's like, Kessel? And then Han's like, yes, Kessel. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, and they basically bullshit their way through the scene. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but basically they're like, hey, they do unrefined coaxium in Kessel. If we steal it from Kessel, then we can bring it to you, and then we can refine it, and then you'll have all of your coaxium. And Beckett, not Beckett, Voss is like, but we have an agreement with the Pike Syndicate not to steal from them, and the coaxium's with the Pikes. And they're like, okay, well, we won't officially be working for you then. We'll be unofficially working for you with like a brand new ship and whatever, and we'll steal it on the down low. And Voss agrees, but sends Kira with them to basically be like his liaison for the mission.
Make sure it's all under the table, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. So now they need a ship, and they need a very fast ship.
So as to which ship it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they kind of set it up as well. They're like, the unrefined coaxium would explode if it's not refined within X amount of hours from it being removed.
The fastest ship in the galaxy.
We need the fastest ship in the galaxy to get to the nearby refinery on Savarine, I think might be the name of the planet. I feel like Savarine sounds right. The desert planet at the end of the film.
Yeah.
So, and they're like, there's no way that you could do that in the amount of time needed unless you had the fastest ship in the galaxy.
You would have to do that in 12 parsecs.
I don't think they actually say that, because I think the original. I think Han makes that shortcut on the fly or whatever. But they turns out though, luckily, the fastest ship in the galaxy, due to its custom modifications and its expert co-pilot who has an amazing nav computer in her brain, happens to be on this planet.
Oh wow. Is it the Millennium Falcon?
It is the Millennium Falcon. Can you guess who owns it?
Oh my god. Is it Lando Calrissian?
And?
His droid Sexbot?
Yes.
I can't believe I got it right.
Man, Lando has a sexbot in this film, huh?
He's got a Sexbot, yeah. And she's very into droid active. But we'll get there.
Yeah. So they show up at this like casino thing in the mountains somewhere.
It's like this grungy fucking like underground like betting thing, isn't it? It's like fucking dog fights, or like
you've got droid fights. You've got droid fights destroying each other, and then you've also got probably illegal sabacc. And yeah, and this has one of my favorite shots in Star Wars, which is this shot where Han walks up to the table and it's shot from behind, and we like see just him silhouetted. It's just this film looks so good, and everyone who said it looked bad annoys me.
Yeah, actually, as soon as you said that, I remembered. It was like clear as day.
It's just such a great shot, and again, it feels like super Indiana Jones-esque, which is awesome. And he basically is like, so he's told that Lando is here at this casino and is playing sabacc, and Han's like, I'll just win the ship off him in a game of sabacc. That's what I'll do. And Kira's like, that's an awful idea. And he's like, yeah, well, I'm doing it anyways.
Sucks.
So he challenges Lando to a game of sabacc, and they play. It's basically Star Wars poker.
It's like Texas Hold'em, yeah.
Yeah, and this again is something that's pre-established in the origin. Well, not even in the origin story from the expanded universe. In Empire, it's established that Han wins the Millennium Falcon in a game of Sabacc. I think Lando accuses him of cheating in the game, but he doesn't cheat in this game. But Lando does. Lando has a card wrist thing that like feeds him the card he needs to win the best hand or whatever.
Han notices it.
Han notices it, but he can't do anything to stop Lando from winning at that point. So Lando's like, "Hey, tough luck, buddy. I'll take your ship now." And as he's like walking to the bar, Kira is just like approaches him and is like, "Hey, Lando," and he's like, "Hey, Kira," and she's like, "We need your ship for a job," and he's like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So basically, Han bet his ship for nothing, and he could have just got Kira to ask Lando, which is funny. And again, this kind of shows the like. I was going to say this shows the naiveness of Han, but this is still Han in the original trilogy when he's like chasing the stormtroopers on the Death Star and that sort of thing.
Yeah. He's being a complete fucking goof.
He is honest to God. He should have died a long time ago. He does not deserve to have lived that long in the Star Wars galaxy.
Well, he does die eventually.
In a very Han way. It's the most Han has ever harmed, in my opinion.
Yeah. He was just fucking shooting from the hip, and then he got stabbed in the chest. Oh well.
Yeah. But so they go to the Millennium Falcon. They have to break it out because it's like been clamped or whatever.
Yeah, there's always a problem.
Yeah. But it's a very different looking Millennium Falcon to how it looks in the original trilogy. And I remember people reacting to it when it was first shown in the trailers.
Oh yeah, doesn't it still have the Doesn't it still have like the escape pod in the middle?
It still has the escape pod in the middle, and it's also like incredibly clean. We're talking prequel clean looking. Which actually I think is one of the things that I really like about this film. And also, have you played Fallen Order?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so I think what that and this film do really, really well visually is they help bridge the gap between the prequels and the original trilogy, because we've talked before about the kind of whiplash of the prequel trilogy of it being like super clean and sleek, and the original trilogy looking like it's a pile of shit in comparison. This film helps bridge that gap because a lot of the film looks like the original trilogy, but the Millennium Falcon looks like it's straight out of the prequels in a good way. It also does kind of imply that, again, depending on how many years this is between this and Star Wars, Chewie and Han live like fucking animals, considering like the lovely white paneling on their ship turns like yellow brown.
Yeah, just like off-white.
Yeah, so I can only assume that either they are like filthy animals or they're just like constantly eating like pot noodle and then like having a bump in the road and they spill it all over their ship and then they can't wash it out.
Chewie, no, not again.
Ah, the pot noodle sauce, it's all over the wall and we don't know what cleaning products are.
Chewie growling in the background.
Yeah. But yeah, so they get on board the ship and Han is like instantly in love and like trying to make this ship his own, and Lando's like, "You can fuck right off. This is my ship. You can sit in the back over there. I'm gonna pilot this ship." Sexbot.
My sexbot wife's ship.
Yeah. And speaking of his sexbot wife, she has this amazing like computer nav like of the galaxy, map of the galaxy with all the best hyperspace lanes in it. Supposedly the knowledge in that sexbot is second to none. So that's what makes the Millennium Falcon so powerful, other than the modifications, is this nav computer that she has.
She's probably the worst character in this movie. She is, however, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who is amazing. Watch Fleabag, very good.
Yes, I would agree. I love Fleabag, but I would also say that like I don't think like some people think it's because she comes off as like the feminist character in the film, but she's a droid rather than being a human female feminist.
Yeah.
I don't think that's why I don't like her as a character. It's not because like that. It's more because she's the most beating you over the head style of humor that this film has. That's all it is for me.
I wouldn't care. She beats you over the fucking skull with this crap. Like,
Yes.
just constantly. Any scene she's in, she's constantly reminding you, this is my character.
Yeah, and that's nothing to do with how she plays that character. It's entirely to do with the writing. I also don't think it's necessarily a badly written droid, because I could totally buy into the fact that a droid would be
Sure,
programmed with
yeah.
that sort of trait. But
Or even just if they hadn't been memory wiped for a while. Like,
yeah,
droids, they develop quarks and shit.
but although I can kind of accept all that, it does make her the least enjoyable character in the film. And I don't even think she's unenjoyable. She's just the, like, if I have to choose one character I would remove from that film, it would be her.
Yeah.
And that's arguably more a testament to the fact that all the other characters, even ones like Val or Monkey Man, who die like 15 minutes after we meet them, are really likable characters. So
Yeah.
um,
So it's more the fact that she's just kind of like, aggressive about her character quirks and shit than it being really like, oh, this character sucks.
yeah, for sure. And it also does have a decent payoff with the Kessel scene later on. So
yes, it does.
So they're flying through space to Kessel, and they are starting to hatch a plan where Kira is going to like disguise herself as a buyer. Han and Chewie are going to be prisoners, and I think Beckett and the droid are going to be like bodyguards essentially. And I think Lando just stays on the ship, right?
Yes, I believe he does.
Yeah.
Because he's much too Donald Glover at his most elegant to risk his life.
Yes. I think later on in the film, when things start kicking off on Kessel, we see Lando doing like...
He shoots a couple of guys, yeah.
No, I was going to say he does a kind of a combination between a captain's log and vlogging, but in hologram form, and it's just like the most Lando thing I could possibly think of.
Yeah. Funny that Donald Glover is a better Lando in this movie than Billy D. Williams is a better Lando in the fucking sequel trilogy, I feel like.
All right. We'll get to Rise of Skywalker, but Lando is great in his first scene in that film.
He's good in his first scene. I like him a lot in his first
but
scene.
But his last scene completely undoes everything else.
Yeah.
So we'll get there.
Folks.
No, it's not. It's really not good at all. But we'll get there. But also at this point, Han is trying to like rekindle his relationship with Kira and like convince her to run away with him when this is all over. And she's like, "Oh, I've got a life now with Crimson Dawn," and there's this kind of, but then they end up. I can't remember if they actually kiss or whether they just almost kiss in Lando's.
I think it's an almost kiss.
Yeah, in Lando's incredibly luxurious closet dedicated to his cloaks. Just cloaks, nothing else in this closet.
Oh yeah, in the fucking cloak closet. That was awesome.
Yeah, and it's also it's quite reminiscent of the scene where Han and Leia have their first kiss in the kind of like I can't remember where exactly their kiss takes place in the Millennium Falcon, but it's like a closet or a like storage room or something.
Yeah.
It's a small cramped room in the Millennium Falcon, and so is this. It might even be the same closet. I don't know.
That would have shocked me.
Yeah,
they probably would have got a real kick out of doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And then also Beckett kind of walks by and witnesses that, and then he later on kind of says to Han, the only way that you can live your life as a criminal... I forgot an important scene that Beckett said earlier to Han when they were first going to go visit Dryden Voss. He was like, if you come with me, you're in this game for life. You're never going to walk away from being a criminal. And so now he's like trying to tutor Han on how to be a criminal, and he says like, if you are going to make it in this life, the only way that you can survive is by never trusting anyone.
Can't trust a dame.
Yeah, essentially. And Han is like, that sounds like a lonely life, and he's like, it's the only life worth living, or something to that effect.
It's the only one where you survive.
Yeah. So they get to Kessel. Again, we've mentioned kind of knowing the original backstory for Han. How did you feel Kessel was represented in this, compared to like your impressions of it from Expanded Universe?
I mostly knew it from I think it was Rogue Leader or Rogue Squadron. There's a mission there where you have to go to Kessel and you have to blow up a bunch of gas stuff. It's some whatever mission. It basically felt like what I imagined Kessel to be. Really shitty, just grimy, just horrible mining conditions. And like, I saw it, I was like, yeah, okay, Kessel.
Yeah, I agree with that. It fit in really nicely with my viewpoint on it. I will say though, I really like it's kind of got these sorry, it's got these kind of like greens and yellows to it, which make it
Mhm.
look really kind of alien
A
and
little more
vibrant.
unique. Yeah.
Yeah, which I really really liked. Again, the visual design of Kessel is really really nice. But they arrive at the mines, and Han and Chewie pose as prisoners, and they get taken
Now,
away.
another thing, real quick. I think you were going somewhere with that. Uh, Kessel, of course, was mentioned in the original trilogy. You know,
The Kessel Run,
eh,
yeah.
the Kessel Run, which he made in 12 Parsecs. Now, this again is like playing into the whole. Well, we're making a Han Solo movie. We gotta anything that was referenced, anything about Han Solo that was in the original trilogy, we gotta cram into this fucking movie. So of course we're gonna have the Kessel Run, the titular Kessel Run.
Yeah, I mean, I think when this film was announced, everyone was like, okay, well, what this film will be about the Kessel Run. What else is in the film? Not sure, but this film will feature the Kessel Run, and
Yeah, it was like Han Solo film gonna be the Kessel Run.
yeah, it's like one of the first things he says is like, huh, I did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, and like that's almost like his defining
Yeah, this
quote
moment.
from the original film. So yeah, so
Of course it's gonna be though.
absolutely, and ultimately it's the focus of the film, so it doesn't feel as kind of whatever is
Tacked on.
as
Yeah,
the solo bit or the gun bit. It feels like this is the point of this film is to show you the Kessel Run.
yeah.
So
So it's forgivable, but
yeah,
still something to point out.
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like one of the things I'll say about this film is this film, and I don't think this is a criticism per se, but this film is very paint by numbers Han Solo origin story.
Yeah.
It hits every beat you expect it to. There's a couple of extra beats in there that are not unwanted, but it does everything you think it will do as a Han Solo film. So
hmm And at least it's having fun with it. So that's basically all
absolutely,
you can ask.
yeah. So Han and Chewie are posing as slaves, and they're taking off to the mines themselves.
They do the Wookiee walking.
hmm Again, reference to the original film. I don't remember whether Chewie complains about being cuffed this time, but if he does, it wouldn't surprise me.
Does.
Yeah. And then Kira and Beckett and the droid go to like the main control hub, where Kira beats up a bunch of people because she knows Terra Kasai. Which, if you know what Terra Kasai is, you've played one of the worst Star Wars video games in existence. Um, but I think it is name dropped as Terra Kasai in the film, so it's a cool little reference. And then
game is that?
Masters of Terra Kasai. It's basically Mortal Kombat but Star Wars.
Oh shit! Oh, okay, yeah, that's cute.
Yeah.
Cute in the worst way possible.
I think it is cute. Disney wiped the entire expanded universe canon from existence, which, although it breaks my heart a little bit, and I don't want to outright say that I'd prefer having the expanded universe and no sequel trilogy than having a sequel trilogy and no expanded universe, because we kind of still have the expanded universe if you want to have it. But it's always nice when they bring stuff back, even if it's a reference to a really shitty video game. But so they basically take control of the control hub, and they tell the droid to like start a revolution, or I think they just tell her to start a distraction or something, but instead she decides to free all the droids from their restraining bolts and start a revolution.
She radicalizes all the droids. The buying into accelerationism and like droid supremacy, and it's just a whole shit show. And the entire base basically revolts.
Yes, when it was supposed to be just like a minor distraction to help Han and Chewie out, it suddenly becomes a full-blown riot with droids. Meanwhile, Han and Chewie knock out one of the like guards of the mine, and Han dresses up as one of the miners, and he goes to steal coaxium. I think at this point things start kicking off, so they have to start rushing, and Chewie sees some Wookiee slaves and decides that he has to go and help his clansmen, and Han's like, yeah, go, that's more important, and he just decides to do the coaxium bit on his own.
Pretty good scene.
Yeah, it's
again, hitting you over the head that, the Han in this movie is not the Han you know later on.
Yes, but it also does a massive
Yeah.
job of explaining why Han and Chewie have this bond, even though Han's kind
Yes.
of a dick, is that he wasn't always a dick. I forgot to mention as well, earlier on in the train heist sequence, Chewie very nearly dies and Han saves his life. So,
Yeah. So yeah, the film does a lot to further emphasize the relationship between them.
yeah.
And even though I just said that Han probably wouldn't have done that in like the original trilogy, I feel like as far as Chewie is concerned, he probably would have because they're basically life partners.
Yes, I think, Chewie is the exception to most of Han's crap in the original trilogy because Chewie knows who Han really is.
Yeah.
While Luke and Leia get lucky that you don't see why Han decides to show up to the Battle of the Death Star. It's very, very likely that he's like flying away with all of his credits, and Chewie's got his hands on his hip and he's got his apron on. And he's like,
Han Solo, you turned this ship right around. And he's like, yeah, okay.
yeah, I 100% buy into that. So he starts moving the coaxium, and it's really, really heavy, and he's seeing like the heat on it going down, and when it reaches a critical point, it will explode. And this is the stuff that leveled a mountain earlier in the film, so we know how dangerous this stuff is. The riot's going on. Han starts getting beaten up by some guards because they work out that he's stealing this stuff. And then Chewie comes to the rescue. I'm pretty sure he rips someone's arms off at this point.
Pretty good.
It's a cool scene, and then he and the other Wookiees help start pushing the coaxium out. Random side note as well, actually, for just thinking about this. I don't fully remember the original Kessel Run, but wasn't the original Kessel Run spice that they were stealing?
I don't think it's ever mentioned. It might be mentioned because Han Solo's a spice smuggler. Like that's the impression you get.
And Kessel is known for its spice mines.
Yes, it is.
It is a bit weird that suddenly it's fuel, but whatever.
Yeah, that is a little strange because it's always. I don't know if it's expanded universe only, but it's definitely known as the Kessel spice mines. Like that's what it's known for.
Even I know you haven't gotten to this point, so minor spoiler. Kessel spice mines are explicitly mentioned in season 7 of Clone Wars, so
cool.
even in current canon, they're known for it. I don't know whether this mine is supposed to be just a coaxium mine or whether it's a spice mine with a coaxium side business. I don't know.
Yeah,
who
and
cares?
even in the original movie, it's in A New Hope, it's yeah, this was definitely a drug smuggler, a drug smuggling run that I did faster than anyone else.
Yeah.
That's what I'm known for.
Yeah, for sure. But they get out into the main area where the ship is landed, and things are kicking off. There's
really bad.
Yeah, there's a massive revolt of slaves and droids and the miners themselves.
Everyone's shooting at everyone else.
Yeah, there's explosions going off. I think there's some E-web anti-vehicle turrets that get set up. Han, Lando, and Beckett are shooting at stuff, and Kira's fucking let me deal with this shit, and she throws a thermal detonator and it blows up one of them, and they're like, oh
yeah.
shit, she's actually really, really capable and better than us. And then the droid, who I still can't remember the name of, gets shot, and Lando gets the droid, but the droid powers down because it's been shot and it basically dies. And then as he's trying to carry it back to the ship, he also gets shot, and then Han has to help him back to the ship. Side note here, at this point we get to see Alden Ehrenreich doing his Han shooting pose, and it is bang on. They looking through the scope while shooting a pistol thing that seems incredibly unfeasible that Harrison Ford did. Alden Ehrenreich nails it. I don't think I could nail it, so good job, man. I wonder how many hours he spent with a coach getting that pose right.
I mean, he had to do the acting lessons apparently, so maybe that was part of it.
I don't know whether I buy into the fact that he had to do acting lessons. Maybe impression lessons for Harrison Ford's mannerisms and stuff. But
that seems a little more believable, yeah.
But even then, I don't look at Alden Ehrenreich's performance and go, you're doing Harrison Ford. He's doing his own version of the character. But I've seen Alden Ehrenreich in other stuff. I've forgotten the name of the film. It's something like The Emperor or something. But it's where he plays an actor in a stage production, and he's a phenomenal actor. So yeah, I'm not sure I buy the fact that he
Yeah,
had acting lessons.
that always felt a little like just like Narumo Mill, and like kind of trumping up the fucking like troubled production this movie had, because like before it came out, that was a huge deal. Like
Yeah.
at least if you were into Star Wars.
This film's gonna be bad because it's about Han Solo and we love Han Solo, therefore we have to create rumors to make it even worse.
Yep,
It's actually a really decent Star Wars film and
I
deserved to
like it
do
more than
way.
Rogue One.
I like it more than any of the Disney Star Wars films so far in just pure enjoyability. It is my favorite of the new Star Wars films. So,
Eat
um,
it, eat it.
yeah, it's and can we have a sequel, please, Disney? I don't really need a sequel to Han's story, but I like those cast of characters. Or just bring back Ron Howard doing that style of heist movie would be cool. Just
Yeah,
more of that sort of Star Wars, please. Even if it's a Disney Plus series, that's fine. Um, but
yep. One day.
one day, yeah. So they get on board the Millennium Falcon, and Lando is like too injured to. He's either too injured to fly a ship, or he's just fussing over the droid. So Han ends up having to fly the ship out of there, and he's like, I don't think he says the line "This is where the fun begins," but that's the feel that we're getting of Han right now is full blown Anakin in Revenge of the Sith. And they escape. I don't think they're chased by anyone, are they? They just kind of get away
No,
free.
I think they're chased by TIE fighters.
Yeah, later on, but I think they just kind of get away free from the mines itself.
Oh yeah, you're right. Because they're flying away and the Star Destroyer shows up.
Yeah. So then the traveling. Are they in hyperspace at that point? Is that in hyperspace? It's not in hyperspace, is it? It's
It
no.
was weird.
I
I don't
think
know.
I think what it is I think they established something like Kessel's in the middle of a nebula or something, so it's like really hard to
Yeah.
get there or something. But it looks like it's in a hyperspace tunnel, which goes against all of my understanding of how hyperspace works. So
Yeah, it was like sublight, but in a hyperspace tunnel. It was weird.
yeah. Anyways, but as they're flying away in this nebula tunnel thing, they see a gigantic Star Destroyer flying towards them, and Han's like, "It's fine. Don't worry about it. I know these guys. They're not gonna send any TIE fighters to deal with one pesky ship." And then like 8 TIE fighters fly out, and he's like, "Oh."
Yeah, never mind.
We assume that they've been summoned because of the troubles on Kessel, like they heard about it and show up or something, but it's never explicitly said why they're there. But Han starts flying away, and we get some like old school John Williams music kicking in, but like remixed, and it's really awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
And the ship starts getting banged up, and panels start exploding, and whatever, and Han's like, we need to jump to hyperspace, or otherwise this coaxium's going to explode. So we're going to have to try and take a shortcut. I'm going to try and fly through the Maelstrom, which is, in this film, it's like a collapsing black hole or something.
It's basically the Maw, only not.
Or is it called the Maw? It might not be called the Maelstrom. I might have got that wrong. It's called
It
the
might be
Maw
the
in the
Maw,
expanded universe, but I don't remember what it's called in the actual film.
Yeah, no, I don't remember.
Either way, it's no, it's the Maw cluster. You're right. I don't know where I got Maelstrom from. Oh well. Oh, haha! I was also right. It's called the Maw cluster / Maelstrom. Awesome.
There you go.
Yeah. So they are gonna have to plot a like shortcut through the Maw, which again that appears in the original story. I don't think it is a black hole in the original story, but
The Maw is it's like a series of black holes, and the whole thing with the Maw is like there's like a secret installation there where the Empire was doing like Death Star research and shit, and like all the bad shit that the Empire ever does. They do it though,
gotcha.
and it's like a cluster of black holes that you have to very carefully navigate through. So it's basically impossible to get to normally.
Yeah. But Han just throws caution to the wind and flies towards it. And the TIE fighters follow. And then
They don't do so well.
No. And he basically says that we need to get the droid's nav computer uploaded directly into the Falcon if we have any chance of plotting a course through this. So they basically dismantle her and plug her directly into the Millennium Falcon. Don't know. Do you know the relevance of them doing that out of interest?
No.
So
I might have known, but I forget.
So supposedly in the original Star Wars film, when R2 is like first interfacing with the Millennium Falcon, C-3PO describes it as him talking to the ship, and
Yes,
droids are
yes.
never described as talking to ships in any other point in Star Wars. So this is like explaining how he's talking to the ship is he's actually talking to the droid who is still alive in the ship, which is kind of cool, I guess.
Yeah, that's cute.
Um, but yeah, they start plotting a course. Meanwhile, Han is still like facing off against the last of the TIE fighters. There's a really cool line where he's like, "I'm gonna try doing this trick that my buddy did back on Corellia in a speeder race. He died trying this." And he like crash lands his ship onto this asteroid, which then sprays rock up into the TIE fighter, exploding it. Which is it's cool. There's some really great Star Wars comedy going on during this action sequence, and I think it's one of the most solid sequences of the film, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, it was a really exciting, like, visually speaking, it was like a really exciting scene, actually.
yeah, the Maul looks fucking awesome. And they start flying past it, and they're still plotting the route when this like alien monster thing starts attacking them. I don't know what it's supposed to be because it's not. I don't think it's from anything previously in Star Wars, but it's like this giant monster that like picture like a kraken or something in space, essentially.
Yeah, didn't it have tentacles or something?
I'm pretty sure it had tentacles. Yeah. And it like starts grabbing the ship and wrecking it some more. And then they and the Kraken thing start getting pulled towards the Maw itself, so into the black hole. And the only way that they can think to escape is if they drop a tiny bit of as they're trying to escape, the engines fail, and the only way they can get them to restart is by dropping a tiny bit of coaxium into the engine cores. So then we have this really tense scene of Beckett trying to insert it before they get pulled into a black hole, and it. Even though, again, you know that these characters are going to survive, but the tension in this sequence is really, really well done.
Yeah, which is, in keeping with a lot of the tense action sequences. Like, even we know they're obviously going to be fine. Like,
Yeah.
You don't know who's going to be fine or what's going to happen.
But when they're all on one ship, you kind of know that the ship's probably going to be fine.
Yeah.
So they manage to get the coaxium into the fuel injector or whatever, and suddenly they kind of shoot forward into hyperspace and escape the grip of the Maw. The creature, however, is not as lucky, and I don't know if you remember this. They literally have it be skinned by the black hole.
Oh, jeez. No, I don't remember that at all. That sounds messed up.
You like fairly graphically see this alien's skin and then bones be ripped off and fed in. And like, this is a children's movie, man.
That's not Star Wars friendly.
I know it's an alien, so like it's not anywhere close to looking like a human, but still.
Maybe you could do that with a rodent, but not a person.
Yeah. But then I suppose again, like, I guess it's not that. And this film to me feels very Indiana Jones inspired.
Yeah.
And this is not that different to the Nazis' faces melting off in a way.
Yeah.
And that's also a 12. That's true, but and also technically, Raiders came out before there was a 12A. Do you know that? Temple of Doom was the film that caused 12A to be a thing. So.
Well, you know.
But yeah, so they escape the Maw, and they, again, it's not fully explained what's going on in this weird, like, nebula near a bunch of black holes or whatever, but, like, it looks like space has rocks that are collapsing in on them like a tiny corridor, and they essentially have to do the move that Han did with the speeder car earlier on in the film, but with the Millennium Falcon.
This time, right?
Yeah, and this time they managed to fit their way through just about. So they managed to make the Kessel Run in under 12 parsecs.
There you go. That's how it's done, people.
Absolutely. Although it's revealed later on when they land on the desert planet that he's actually rounding down, and it was actually closer to 13 parsecs or something. But 12 sounds more impressive, and either way, it's still like 13 is still much faster than anyone else has ever done it. But So they get the coaxium offloaded and they start refining it while on this planet. The Millennium Falcon is in a heap. Like, they basically crash landed it.
Yeah.
And, like, most of the panels are missing. It's already starting to get that kind of hunk of junk look that it has in the original Star Wars film. And as they kind of look over it, Lando basically retorts that he hates Han and never wants to see him again. And then goes back to his ship while Han and Beckett and whatever deal with the actual refining of the coaxium. As they wait for it to be refined, the village that they kind of land at is like incredibly poor and like almost looks like if you told me that this was a scene out of Mad Max, I could buy it, sort of thing. Like, they have that sort of level of poor. And I don't think anyone speaks to them, right? Like, they all are completely silent the whole time, because isn't it like revealed that their tongues got cut out or something?
No, I think Ness does talk after she unmasks herself.
Yeah, so she shows up later, but I think the actual villagers, they don't talk, and I think it might be like their tongues got cut out or they were silenced in some other way or something, but
that I don't remember.
I don't remember either. I feel like there might have been something to do with that, but either way, like the fact that they just kind of look at the group but don't talk to them, it does create this kind of sense of uneasiness. Anyways, Han makes his move on Kira again, and he's like, we did it. You can get away from Voss now, and we can run away. And she kind of remarks that she's no longer the kid that he knew on Corellia. And he's like, well, I'm not the kid that you knew on Corellia either. I'm an outlaw. And she's like, no, you're the good guy. That's who you are. Which is, it's a bit over the head with a hammer again.
Bit on the nose.
But oh well, this is a children's movie. That's the moral of the story, so it's fine.
Even when Han Solo's being bad, he's still being good.
Yeah, and he literally like retorts to her. He's like, oh, I'm a terrible person. I'm a hardened criminal. And she's like, no, you are the good guy, and you make the right choice. Like, you are a hero at the end of the day. It's a bit premature. He hasn't actually done anything heroic, but okay.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah.
And then Enfys Nest shows up with her people. Random fact here. I'm gonna forget his name. Fuck. This is really gonna annoy me now. He's one of the gang members, but I've completely blanked on his name. Bear with me. He's in Harry Potter as well, I remember that, so I'm going to quickly try and find his character's name in Harry Potter and then find the actor's name. Warwick Davis. So he's an English actor who has dwarfism, so he appeared in Star Wars Return of the Jedi, I believe, as one of the Ewoks, and then he made an appearance in Phantom Menace as a completely different character called Rook. No, sorry, called Weasel. He's played multiple characters in Star Wars. This is the problem. He plays a character called Weasel, who is one of the guys who watches the pod race that Anakin's part of. That's still him in Solo. That's supposed to be the same character. So it's not just played by the same actor.
I kind of hate that.
Why'd you hate it? He went from just watching a the pod race to becoming a hardened gangster / rebel.
You know what? At least he's older. At least he's actually older in this, because Solo takes place chronologically after Phantom Menace. So, like, whatever.
But yeah, so that's a random fact that took way too long to get the information on, so I could tell the facts. But
we got the facts now, so we got it.
Yeah. So Enfys Nest basically explains that Crimson Dawn ruined these people's lives and her lives, and that they plundered the planet she grew up on. I'm reading the article now because I've got the Wikipedia article up for it in Solo. Yeah, the villagers' tongues got cut out, so that's why they don't talk at all. And so basically she's like, Crimson Dawn are like some of the worst criminals ever, and they will just continue to destroy people's lives if you sell them this coaxium. Meanwhile, if you give it to me, we will help with the resistance against the Empire. That's what we'll use it for. So they had to make a decision, and Han says to Beckett, look, I can't give these. Oh, sorry. Before she like reveals herself, when they first show up and like threaten Beckett and co, Han's like, what you don't know is we've got a whole platoon of people in that Millennium Falcon there, and then Lando takes off in the Millennium Falcon and leaves them there. So
Pretty good.
yeah, so pretty.
Shut up in all the trailers.
Yep, and also it's good because it means that Han doesn't have the Falcon; he's kind of on his own now. So he then says to Beckett, "Look, we can't give the coaxium to Dryden," and he suggests an alternative plan where they try and double cross Dryden. Beckett doesn't agree to it and just says, "Look, if that's what you want to do, cool, you do that, but I can't be part of it. If you live through this, there's some big shot gangster on Tatooine setting up a job, which will lead into Han having a bounty on his head in Star Wars."
Job of the Hutt.
So Beckett disappears. Han and Chewie and Kira go to Dryden's yacht, which shows up. And they have fake coaxium canisters, and Han's like smuggled his gun in as well. They try and convince Dryden that it's real, but Dryden doesn't believe them. And then it's revealed that it's because Beckett already showed up and explained to Dryden what the plan was.
Yeah, so, he's low.
Yeah. So then Beckett, I can't remember why Beckett ends up leaving. He takes Chewie and I can't remember whether is he sent to get the real coaxium or
something like that.
Yeah, but he leaves the yacht with Chewie as a prisoner, and then he's gonna basically kill Han. And Kira is like, "Oh no, I was loyal to you the whole time, so I'm not trying to double cross you. I'll kill Han as well." And Beckett's...
And then she double crosses him.
Yeah, and Beckett's all like, "I told you not to trust me." So Han's suddenly supposedly all on his own. But just then, Voss's men... That's right, Voss's men are sent all off the yacht to go and collect the real coaxium from the village. At which point Enfys Nest's men attack and stop them from getting any of the coaxium. Which leaves basically Dryden on his own on the ship with Kira and Han with no backup. A fight ensues, which is pretty cool. I don't
remember a lot about the fight. I remember thinking, "Oh, this is neat." But that's about it.
There's one bit in particular I like, where basically Kira gets a sword, and during this whole time, Dryden has what I'm assuming are supposed to be like vibro daggers, or like energy daggers or something like that. They're like lightsabers, but they don't cut quite as good as lightsabers. And at one point, so basically Kira starts like double crossing. During this fight, there's about like 8 or so different double crosses between Kira and Beckett.
There's a lot.
She's
it's kind of like a huge gambit at the end, which I like. That's very like, heist movie stuff.
Yes, we don't know which side Kira is actually on, because at one minute she's going to kill Han, then she's going to kill Beckett, and then she's going back to killing Han. She's basically, it feels like she's trying to play whoever's going to win this fight, I'm on their side. Which makes sense. It definitely plays into her kind of survival kind of character, and her telling Han that she's not the kid she was back on Corellia. So
exactly, yeah.
But at one point, Beckett's about to kill her, and she like tries to stab her sword through his dagger, and the dagger gets like embedded halfway through the sword, and then she ends up like swinging the sword like a club and impaling Beckett with the other part of the knife, which is what I thought was really cool in that fight.
Yeah, no, that was good.
But yeah, she kills Beckett, Han lives, and then
she kills Dryden.
Right, I keep on getting Beckett and Dryden's names confused. I don't know. I don't even know why they're not similar. I think it's just like, I don't know.
I'm a real Star Wars fan.
Yeah, I'm a fake Star Wars fan. She kills Dryden, and then she basically tells Han that he needs to go and save Chewie because they need to depend on each other now. They're like
They're life partners.
They're life partners. They've already showered together,
Yeah, I mean, you gotta save your shower, bro.
And for all we know, he's never seen Kira naked. We haven't seen that yet, so he's definitely seen Chewie naked. So I mean,
he's closer to Chewie.
Yeah, for sure.
They have a bond that's unbreakable.
But she tells him to go and save Chewie, and she'll be right behind him. And she's just gonna like
Clean up.
and like get them a head start, like steal some of the relics that Dryden has or whatever. So Han heads off. I can't remember whether this scene happens immediately or whether Han. I don't remember whether Han with Beckett happens first or whether the scene with Kira happens first.
I think it's post credits, isn't it?
No, I don't think it's a post credit scene. I don't think Star Wars has done a post credit scene yet.
I want to say it's after.
Okay, so we'll do the Han and Beckett thing then. So Han catches up with Beckett. He somehow gets in front of Beckett, which is a little bit confusing because the yacht is behind Beckett. Yeah, he got to Beckett's point in under 12 parsecs or something. But he gets in front of Beckett, so like Beckett like comes over this hill with Chewbacca, and Han's just standing there with the gun ready. And Beckett like tries to negotiate with him and is like, at the end of the day, I did what I had to do. I'm a survivor. I told you not to trust anyone, but look, you survived. That's good. We can team up. I'm not going to try and double cross you.
And all the while, Beckett's going for his gun very slowly.
Yes, and right when he thinks that he's got Han just shoots him straight through that gut.
Mm-hmm. And in this case, Han did in fact shoot first.
Yes, I'm so fucking glad that Han shot first in this scene because George Lucas, you can try as hard as you fucking want. Han shot fucking first.
He murdered that fucking Rodian.
And he murdered this guy too, but this guy doesn't say McClunky right before he dies. Because he gets a few final moments with Han, and he basically says that I don't know whether he says the words proud, but he basically says the equivalent of Han, I'm proud of you, you did what I would have done, you might be okay.
Yeah, he was like, I would have killed you dead.
Yeah, he's like, you made the right decision to shoot me because I was going to shoot you. And then as he's like, final moments, his eyes start to glaze over, he grabs Han's cheek and he says, McClunky.
Yeah, he whispers McClunky,
yeah,
and then he dies.
And so Han and Chewbacca kind of head back to the village, and Enfys Nest is like taking the refined coaxium, and she tries to convince Han to join the rebellion against the Empire, and he's like, that's not me. I
ain't about that life.
Yeah, I'm a criminal, and I'll continue doing criminal stuff. I just made the right decision today because it was a good day or whatever. But out of gratitude, she still gives him enough coaxium to be able to sell and buy his own ship. So he gets paid, just nowhere near as much as he was going to get paid. Meanwhile, Kira hasn't met up with Han. She's still back on the yacht. She accesses his private holo call and starts having a voice, like a holo message with a hooded figure.
She does a Zoom conference with Darth Maul.
Yeah. Really random fact again about this. So they got the original actor to play Maul in this scene.
Really?
Yeah, so they brought him back from Phantom Menace.
Did it just bring Sam Witwer back?
But it's Sam Witwer's voice, because the original actor in Phantom Menace only has one line in that entire film, which is like, "At last, revenge will be ours," or whatever. Yeah. So, yeah, he played the character originally, but ultimately No, sorry, I'm getting this wrong. In the original, in Phantom Menace, you had, was it Ray Park who played Darth Maul? I know that he did all the stunts. I think Ray Park did all of the acting, not just the stunts, but they had a different person play the voice of Darth Maul who only had one line. In this, they brought back Ray Park to do the physical acting, but they had dub over all of his lines with Sam Witwer, because Sam Witwer has gone on to become the iconic voice of Maul in both Clone Wars and Rebels. I think that's really, really awesome. I don't know whether I've said this to you or if I've said this to other friends, but there's rumors that Ahsoka Tano is going to move into live action.
Oh, wow.
Part of me would love if Ashley Eckstein got to continue voicing Ahsoka. It wouldn't work if she was so supposedly she's going to show up in Mandalorian Season 2. If she's actually going to be a main character in any of the episodes of Season 2, there's no way that you could do it for an entire episode and it be convincing. But for this 1 minute scene, they managed to dub over it, and it's completely believable that Sam Witwer was playing the entire character, even though it's not his face. But yeah, Maul's back with his robo legs and his lightsaber, which he ignites for no fucking reason, because it's not a Star Wars film. If a lightsaber doesn't appear in a Star Wars film, it's not a Star Wars film.
Not actually a Star Wars
which
film.
Is why Rogue One also has a lightsaber sequence. But
God. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, he turns on his light, he's like, "Come visit me on Dathomir, and we'll plan our next plot." For anyone
Get
who,
a load of this cool ass lightsaber.
yeah, and for anyone who hasn't watched Clone Wars and had no idea that Maul was still alive, this was probably the most confusing scene in Star Wars history.
Yeah, I'm sure that confused a shit ton of people.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Maul totally survived Obi-Wan doing that shit to him
He
through
was just too
pure
angry
hatred.
to die.
And he eventually came back, and he's a pretty prominent character in both Clone Wars and Rebels. This is
One of the
set
best
in
parts about it,
between
honestly.
Rebels. I think I started truly enjoying Rebels the moment Maul showed up. Not necessarily because of Maul, but because the story actually started becoming engaging, and Maul was in it. So, but
That entire arc is like really good.
yes. I think we'll talk about that because that's a particularly good arc and a fantastic season finale. So, but yeah, he shows up and confuses the heck out of casual Star Wars fans.
Well, not true Star Wars fans.
Yes, unlike us who have proven ourselves to be true Star Wars fans.
Time and time again.
Yes. And then she like takes off, and Han sees her take off, so he knows that she's abandoned him, basically. Sometime later, there's a jungle planet somewhere where Lando is playing Sabacc and flirting with people and talking about how great and amazing he is when Han shows up.
She is.
Which he is. He does not lie. But Han shows up, and Lando's like, "Ha ha, Han!" And Han,
You old dog.
yeah, and Han's like, "You left me for dead, and I very nearly died, and I'm pretty pissed off. I would have Chewie rip your arms off right now." And Lando's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" At which point Han grabs his arm and like pulls him into like a hug handshake thing, while also tearing off his card cheater wrist thing at the same time. And then Han plays him in a straight game of Sabacc with no cheating and wins.
But it gets the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, and he gets the Millennium Falcon. And
See, I would have liked the film more if, like, Lando just fucked off the Millennium Falcon and you never saw it again. It's like, how did he get the Millennium? I don't know. He beats him again. He beats him fair and square. I don't think we had to see that, but I don't know. It would have been cute
I think
if it like ended without him having the actual ship.
I think it's the intention of it was to have it end with them in the Millennium Falcon, so that you're like,
Yeah, so they can get that money shot.
yeah, exactly. But at the same time, it would have particularly been cool if we hadn't seen them get the Millennium Falcon, because then Disney would feel obliged to make a sequel to this film because we have to know how he actually got it.
We have to know how he actually got it.
Yeah.
We're gonna get a Casino Royale fucking movie in Star Wars, and it's just all about him getting the Falcon.
But yeah, so that's the film. That's the story. That's the beats of it. Any other like random notes or observations you had about it?
No, not really. Just, it's a pretty straightforward movie. It's technically pretty good. Looks great. It, is pretty well acted. A lot of good acting in it. And it's just, it's a pretty simple, satisfying little, like, smuggling criminal heist thing. And it's like, it does that really well.
Yeah, it 100% is like, I think people talk about popcorn films as like they're a negative thing, and so particularly like Star Wars and to a lesser extent I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe is trying to elevate themselves beyond being just popcorn films and becoming something more, becoming art. And that's fine. I enjoy that, and I will get to these films, but I do admire, even if I don't think it succeeds in all of its ways. I think The Last Jedi tries to do something more with Star Wars than other films that Disney has made with the Star Wars IP, that we'll get to eventually. This film doesn't try and be anything more than a popcorn adventure film, but it does it so fucking well.
Yeah, it does.
And as we said kind of at the top, do you think it would be a better film if Han wasn't the main character and it was just someone else?
I don't know. Like, there's a lot of, like, for all that I get on it for being like, oh, we gotta explain this, Han said this in this movie, we gotta explain that. I don't think any of those things really detract from it. I'm gonna make fun of it for it, but I'm not gonna get on the movie's case for doing it well.
Yes.
And it does it in a fairly elegant and fun way.
I will forever meme the shit out of Han Solo.
Yeah,
But
sure.
then I'm also kind of glad that we got a new meme out of this, because the prequels are known for giving us amazing memes. This film is much, much better than any of the prequels, in my opinion, and it also gave us a solid meme, so I'm glad.
Yeah, well, you got the whole picture.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that this genuinely, this film is not trying to do anything near as complicated. Like, we kind of talked about Revenge of the Sith being a bloated film and having way too much to do in one film.
Yep.
Don't envy Revenge of the Sith for trying to do that. Considering everything it had to try and do, it did a pretty decent job. This film's not trying to do anywhere near as much as that. But because of that, and because it's, I would argue, a more solid film, even if it was trying to do all of that, it is a much better film overall than anything in the prequels. So, yeah, if you didn't watch Solo because you either were burnt out from The Last Jedi or didn't want to watch a prequel about Han Solo, or
give it a shot.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good movie.
It is my favorite of the Disney Star Wars films so far.
Yeah, same.
So I would absolutely recommend it. And at the same time, ignore everything we just said for the entirety of the last hour and 40 odd minutes, because we went into this film with zero expectations, and that's how you should go into it too. So actually, delete this podcast from your memory, then come back and re-listen to it when you've watched the film and go, these guys were right, and then we'll get 2 views from you.
This is a pretty good... This is not just an okay Star Wars podcast. It's pretty good. It's pretty okay.
Yeah.
Then we can finally change the name.
But yeah, no, it was good. It was a solid film, and
it's a solid film. That's pretty much all I can ask for.
Yeah, particularly in amongst a lot of debate and controversy around Disney Star Wars films, this just presented essentially what the original Star Wars film was, which is just a fun, ridiculous, somewhat silly romp through space. And if you cast your mind back to 1977, when the original Star Wars came out, I knew that. Did you see how I knew the year it came out? Because I'm a true Star Wars fan.
I believe
it. There was no lore established there. There was no arguing about, expanded universe, non-expanded universe. There was no vast backstory that we all knew because we'd lived and breathed Star Wars for decades. It was just... there's a bunch of people in a spaceship and their swords glow, and there's a furry dude who's basically like a walking dog who goes... That was an awful Wookiee roar.
Points for effort.
But that's what Star Wars was originally, and it's grown to be so much more than that, and I'm glad. But this film fully embraces just that. This is a fun adventure blockbuster. So
yeah, we're gonna reference Star Wars. It's gonna be a Star Wars movie, but it's gonna be a fun Star Wars movie. It's not gonna feel like letting down by all the other expectations you have. It's gonna play into them a little bit. It's gonna wink at you while doing it.
And despite the fact that it has no right to be this good, considering it's a prequel about Han Solo, it is. So that's also worthy of some merit. So
give it a shot.
Yeah.
The first Star Wars film I can safely say you should watch on this podcast.
I mean, I would safely say if you have no recollection, you've never watched Star Wars and this is your first time, and for some reason you're listening to this podcast in release order, Ryan mentioned the machete viewing. Yeah.
Yep.
Do that. That sounds like a pretty solid way to watch Star Wars, where you get the best Star Wars films up front, and also, the prequels are still worth watching, but I wouldn't recommend anyone who's never seen Star Wars to begin with Phantom Menace, because it's a great way for them to go, I'm not going to bother with the other...
Actually, fuck this.
Yeah, there's another 10 films for me to watch. I'm alright.
Yeah, no. This movie, give it a shot. That's all I can say about it. Give it a shot. It'll surprise you. Either in a good way or a bad way.
Hopefully a good way. All right.
Hopefully a good way, if you believe us.
Next episode, which is, we do this every 2 weeks, we'll be doing Rogue One,
which is a much worse movie.
There's some things to say about it. I like a lot of it, but I also dislike a lot of it. So
I want Ryan on for that one because he likes that movie more than Solo, so I will enjoy locking horns with him. I know, right?
Ooh,
We'll get into that.
yeah. There are okay. Before we end this, I mean, we should almost leave this for next episode. But there are some people genuinely on the internet right now who say that Rogue One is their favorite Star Wars movie.
Star Wars
Not
movie.
favorite
Okay.
Disney Star
Okay,
Wars
hold
movie,
on.
but
We need to do this next time.
yes, that's a ridiculous take, and we'll get into it next time. Anyways, see you later, guys.
See you guys later.
Bye.